The bathroom was silent except for the faint hum of the extractor fan, but outside my sanctuary I could hear the laughter. My phone was heavy in my hand, the cracked screen pressing into my palm, and even behind the locked door I wasn't safe from the echo. I sat on the cold tile, back pressed to the bathtub, knees pulled in tight, and read the comments blinking up at me. Did she really think exposing corruption would matter? Bless, who gave her that haircut? The NHS. Mate, she'll end up writing for the train station newsletter at best. Cousin clown. Pipe dream Polly. Someone in the living room had passed my latest video, the grainy, stammering announcement that I intended to become not just a journalist, but an investigative journalist in London, to their mates. At first I'd thought only my cousins would see it, but within an hour my face was everywhere, my optimism dissected under a microscope for sport. People I didn't even know were sharing it, snickering in WhatsApp groups. My world was small and my dream, apparently, was ridiculous. I could hear Chris, my older brother, amplifying the mockery for our aunt's benefit. She thinks she's going to blow the roof off Parliament, yeah. Ellie Barlow taking down the government with a blogspot. Their laughter stabbed through the walls. Someone banged on the door, my mum's voice sharp and embarrassed. Ellie, how long are you going to hide in there? She didn't know I could hear her on the phone telling Auntie Jo that kids these days all needed a little more sense and a little less social media. I tried to breathe slowly, silently. The sticky scent of shampoo coated my nose. I counted my breaths. In 4, hold out 4. I never replied to those first messages, never made a follow-up post. I deactivated Instagram for a month, but that only made them laugh harder. At family gatherings, my cousin Sadie sneered at my big plans, and my dad tried to gently nudge me towards something sensible. You've always loved teaching, Ellie. That's a steady life, or HR. Why look for troubles? Sometimes I caught my own reflection and felt ashamed of the hope in my eyes. Everywhere I went, the ridicule trailed behind me, invisible but ever-present. Even when my youngest cousin Mikey asked with genuine interest, "So what do you really do then?" I bit back shame before answering, but I didn't stop. Instead, I learned to move quietly. I enrolled anyway, cleaned the floors at a West End bar at night, took the bus from Barking into Holborn for unpaid internships, research gigs, local papers, anything that would carry me forward. It was humiliating to live at home, to hear the jokes at Christmas, but something inside me set like concrete. I would not let the joke be the last word. Most days I lived with patience. I'd wipe tables and write notes between shifts, contacts, questions, observations about the places few people looked. I learned to search local council records, look at business connections, check who got paid for what and by whom. I got used to the particular hum of fluorescent lights in newsrooms that ran on caffeine and stale sandwiches. On my 25th birthday, I stood at the edge of the Thames, numb with exhaustion, looking at the city lights. I wondered for a moment if it would really matter, if I could actually dig up anything important. Who cared? But the memory of that laughter hardened my resolve. My first real break was the council flats fire in Bow. I went where the other reporters didn't bother, speaking to tenants who told me about missing fire doors, ignored complaints, money gone missing. I filed story after story, most ignored, until one landlord, sloppy and arrogant, left a paper trail. My work got picked up by North Tower, a mid-tier investigative publication. It wasn't viral. My byline was tiny, but the work was real. The city started to know my name, not as the girl who overreached, but as a name next to truth. My bosses stopped introducing me as our junior. They stopped calling me ambitious with that faintly mocking smile. I was simply a journalist. It wasn't fast, but it was relentless. I followed the money, traced stories no one else wanted. Political kickbacks, safety scandals, shell companies set up by friends of MPs. Each time, I worked quietly, knowing that somewhere someone from my past was still laughing. I let patience be the shadow to my humiliation. Years passed. The small London flat moved from being a squeeze to a sanctuary. My roommate Nasira was a seasoned reporter from Karachi who understood, without asking, what it meant to carry rejection until it wore smooth as a stone. Sometimes I listened to her stories at the kitchen table and felt a flicker of hope. One day, Chief Editor Franks called me into his glass office. His face was as rumpled as his shirt. He tapped a folder on his desk. "Ellie," he said, "you've been on the Tate Limbry case for 6 months straight. You want to see it through." I nodded. It was the biggest story I'd ever touched. A contracting firm tied to public spending, taxpayer money vanishing, cheap building projects crumbling. The corruption ran deep, into the homes people slept in, the parks kids played in. I'd taken trains across the city at dawn, knocked on doors, filed more requests than I could count. Franks pushed the folder toward me, keep going. But be careful. That night I lay in bed tracing cracks in the paint over my head, feeling fear curl in my stomach. Success was near, but so was danger, lawyers, threats, pressure from above. I remembered the sneers at home and the cold hush after each new ridicule. It made me steadier. I worked through rain and sun, tracking every name, every transaction. When the story finally broke, it ran as a double-page spread, my byline in bold. London's rotten core, how Tate Limbry took millions and left tower blocks unsafe. National coverage picked it up. The government called for an inquiry. Victims' families wrote to me. But what I remembered most wasn't the applause in the newsroom or the breakfast TV inquiries, but the memory of my mum reading the headline in the metro at our kitchen table, her brow furrowed in disbelief. It had been 7 years since my ignominious social media debut, 7 years of Christmas dinners and tired job advice, and the odd, faintly hopeful text from my mum. Are you eating well? One Friday in June, after the recognition, invitations began arriving from home. Dad texted, "Come by Sunday, we'll do a roast, Nan misses you." For the first time in years, there was something akin to pride behind his words. I took the district line back to Barking, a notebook and an annotated, ribbon-marked copy of the magazine in my tote. The estate was unchanged, the same wind-stained lifts, the metallic tang of rain on the stairs. But the hush when I opened the door was new, my family waiting, my mum's hands twisting with nerves, anticipatory tension crackling in the air. Mikey was older now, taller, voice deeper. He grinned at me sheepish. "Nice work, Elle. You're all over the news." Dad, usually so practical, cleared his throat. "Your nan's telling everyone at bingo about you." Aunt Jo, who'd led the social media campaign of ridicule years before, sat with her phone on the table, shaking her head with grudging respect. But it was Sadie's reaction that stopped me cold. She didn't meet my eyes, but I saw the flicker in her expression when she picked up the magazine and found my byline. "How did you actually find this out?" she asked. The others leaned in, sensing the magnitude of the moment. For the first time, their skepticism wasn't playful, it was curiosity, hunger for understanding. I opened my notebook and thumbed through my notes. Cautious at first, then gaining confidence as I spoke. "I started with complaints," I said, "from tenants about cheap repairs, fire doors that didn't shut, windows that didn't lock. Then I looked at council contracts, found inconsistencies. Tate Limbry bought materials from a related company, priced far above market rate. Some of the supplier companies had directors in common, family, friends, politicians, cousins. I traced the accounts to holding firms in Cyprus. I visited the sites, took photos, collected testimonies. It was a web, but no one wanted to see it until the blocks started falling apart. I heard my uncle's intake of breaths. Even the youngest cousins, too small years ago to mock or defend, watched in awe. Sadie held out the magazine in a shaky hand. "All these years you just kept going." I nodded, suddenly overwhelmed. The old humiliation throbbed at the edges, but inside it patience burned hot. "You have to, that's the job." Mum looked up, her eyes were red but proud. "We are proud of you, Ellie, proper proud." My shoulders loosened. Even Dad, the skeptic, smiled at me with something like awe. Then Chris, the original ringleader of my doubters, stood and crossed the room. "Sorry, Elle, for you know." His voice was thick. I realized he meant it. It was quiet after that. We ate together, the table crowded with plates and nervous affection. In the lull after dessert, Mum tapped her phone and, in a gesture that made my cheeks burn, pulled up the online article for everyone to see. My face, my story on the national news, undeniable proof, impossible to ignore. For the next week, people from the estate stopped me at the bus stop, told me their stories, asked if I'd dig into other problems. Mikey's school invited me to speak. My dad pointed me out to strangers at the pub. Late one evening, after the house had gone still, I walked to the playground at the end of the block. The swings squeaked in the wind as the sky deepened to blue-black. I closed my eyes and inhaled the diesel, the damp brick, the distant sound of traffic. For so many years, this place had felt small and suffocating, a backdrop for mockery and doubts. But tonight it felt different, not triumphant, just real. My story had rooted itself back here. The laughter was gone, replaced by something softer, quieter, but stronger, respect, maybe even hope for me for whoever came next. I sat on the swing, notebook in my lap, and wrote a new headline across the empty page, "Coming Home." It felt right to be here, not as someone who had escaped, but as someone who had proven that the joke wasn't on me. I let the breath out slowly, feeling the cool night, the weight of the years, the curious freedom that comes after patience. The proof of my work wasn't just in the pages and the headlines, but in the way laughter had been replaced, finally, quietly, by pride.